Welcome to the Conscious Publicist Podcast, a space where thoughts become ideas to advocate for a more conscious human experience in the media. Our thoughts and ideas inspire action, and the most notable leaders and organizations have transformed thoughts and ideas into global initiatives that have impacted the lives of millions. My name is Ashley Graham, and as a woman-owned business founder and publicist, I guide leaders, visionaries, and creators in discovering their conscious media voice and methodologies that inspire connection, community, and impact through aligned media channels. In this podcast, we'll dive into public relations, thought leadership, business, and entrepreneurship, all through the lens of being a conscious human being. I'll take you behind the scenes into the habits, thoughts, and modalities that have helped leaders shift past paradigms of limiting beliefs, comparison, and self-doubt to show up for themselves to become the subject matter experts they were called to be. Subscribe to the show on Apple or Spotify and join us on this journey of awakening the conscious, enlightened leader within you. I'm officially hopping back on the podcast following my maternity leave, as my baby girl was born on August 5th. Today's episode highlights a few time parallels since it was recorded during my third trimester. However, the message applies universally to this stage of my life as well as motherhood, and I'm sure it will for you regardless of what stage you're in. For many women, pregnancy and other stages of significant change and growth often bring the deepest shifts in self-image. And that's exactly what today's conversation is about. My guest, Lisa Haukom, is a photographer, author, creator of the Photo Club, and what I believe her to be is a self-image coach who has cracked the code on something many of us struggle with quietly. There's often this struggle of disliking our photos, feeling like we're never enough, and constantly performing for an invisible audience instead of truly enjoying those subtle, special moments in our lives. In this conversation, we explore Lisa's methodology, including her transformative 30-day photo practice that combines neuroscience and the camera lens to help you finally see yourself clearly. We discuss why we often fail to recognize our own faces in photos, the distinction between mirrored and non-mirrored images, and how our brains have been automatically adjusting our appearance in the mirror throughout our lives. We also get vulnerable about reparenting ourselves, as well as showing up imperfect anyway, and about the impossible pressure cooker we put ourselves under, especially as women building businesses, creating content, and trying to be visible online while simultaneously battling the voice that says we're not ready, not good enough, or not polished enough. And never done before, I even participated in one of Lisa's exercises live on the podcast, which was vulnerable to say the least. Whether you're avoiding the camera, struggling to show up authentically online, or simply just tired of deleting photos of yourself, this conversation is for you. Lisa's work is so much more than snapping the perfect photo. It's about creating space between your reactive thoughts and your truth. It's about finally meeting yourself. Are you ready to meet you? Lisa, I am so excited to bring your story and your message to the Conscious Publicist podcast. To get us started, what story and message are you wanting to tell in this moment through your brilliance and your wisdom?
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you. Gosh, I know we've been talking a little bit before, and there's so many things I could say right now. I think the most important thing that I want to get through is I want people to question their next thought or their next action, specifically about themselves and what they think they know to be true. And we're going to talk about what I do on the podcast today, which is a lot around self-image and self-perception. But there's so many stories tied to the meaning behind that. And I want everybody to consider the fact that they might be reactive based on something that's not even true or theirs. So if they can create some space with us today and for this and for themselves. I think that's the biggest message I want to get across.
That's beautiful. I want to circle back to the reactive part of what you just mentioned because I think that is a key word. And I'm sure that when we're talking about reactivity to our self-image, that can stem into so many different parts about how we see ourselves, what that means, the part that we play, how we show up in the world. But I want to bring us back to what we were actually talking about before I hit record. We were talking a little bit about how just being imperfect and showing up anyways. I think ultimately that's the short version of what we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And from my personal lens at the moment, I'm going through so many different self-image changes through pregnancy, and I'm sure that this is just the beginning before baby comes into the world, and then I continue to evolve and change through motherhood and how that reflects through my self-image. But I would love to hear what story were you wanting to really talk about before we hit record? I think that would be amazing to dive into your lens with that.
Well, we were talking about the pressure cooker that we put on ourselves, right? Because you agreed to do something with me at the end of the podcast, hopefully, possibly. And I agreed to lay the foundation before that so that when we got to that point, it would be good. And I've never done this live with anybody outside of my private coaching. And when we were prepping for this podcast, I just started to get nervous. I started to get nervous about it. And then you just shared that you were getting nervous about it too. And we actually had a couple reschedules because we both set the expectation that we needed to be in a particular energy for this. And that's actually where we started before we hit record because I think that pressure is it's just ridiculous. And we need to explore where that comes from. And that actually brings me into why I started down this road in the first place. Because before this iteration, I had several other businesses. As a chef, I own a catering company. I had a clothing design business. I worked in art curation at the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. So I've done all these things, but I hit that point where I realized I was living under so much pressure. And so I had to explore where that was coming from. And I discovered the work of Leslie and Lindsay Kite. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they wrote a book called More Than a Body. And it's a beautiful book. And they are smart women. They have a lot of degrees between them. And they explain this concept of self-objectification. Can I just paint the picture for you? Because I think it'll explain the pressure cooker feeling. Okay, so self-objectification, the way that they actually explain it is instead of enjoying the moment, so instead of enjoying like the softness of my sweater or the coolness of my water or the safety of the seat underneath me holding me up while I talk to you, it's that idea of being observed almost outside of your body doing the thing. So the example they use is going for a walk. It's a nice crisp day. You put on your coat, you go out the door. It's beautiful. The leaves are crunching under your feet. The coffee is warm in your hands. You're smiling at people that pass you on the street. Okay, that's how one version of people's brain works. When I learned people function like this, and this is actually what's happening in their head when they're in that scenario, I was absolutely floored because my experience was as an observer experiencing me. So when I passed that person on the street, it was, oh, they just noticed I didn't brush the back of my hair. Oh, there's dog hair on my pant leg. I probably should have rethought this whole outfit before I came out. Why did that person smile at me that way? Is there something on my face? I'm just going to turn around and go back inside. It's that observation of being observed and completely living outside of your own body and dissociating from what's happening internally and what you feel and what's yours. So it's almost like these doors are open all the time to ourselves. And that was something I just grew up with in my childhood. I didn't really get the parenting that I wish I had. So part of my journey later in life when I had my son So this is actually the perfect conversation today, was to reparent myself and to put this idea together that there's another way to think rather than just through this self-objectification, which creates the pressure that nothing that you're doing is good enough, right? For this, how you're perceived on the outside, but none of it's actually about you and what you need. So I needed to figure out how to turn this internally. Now, on the flip side, there's the cultural conversation about beauty standards and expectations and how we're supposed to improve and be better and, just the constant maintenance of our self and our personhood, right? So we're torn. We've got this balancing act where we're constantly feeding the one to support the other. That's where the pressure cooker comes from. So for me, the thing that I turned to, because I'm a tough love person, again, I had to learn how to nurture myself. I turned to something that is very objective and not biased. There's a little bit of bias, but it's not like human bias. I turned to the camera and I took photos of myself for 30 days in a row and went through letting myself run the gamut of everything that I felt when I looked at those. What I did there was I allowed myself the space to entertain the idea that there was a little bit more that I maybe was not privy to. And there might be something else beyond what I already knew in the mirror. And that started to relieve the pressure. It started to put me back in my body where I belonged so that I could be present for moments and really take away from the moment what was the most important. So that was like a little roundabout way to kind of get us back where we started. But that's why I was like, when we started talking about this pressure cooker, that I know everybody can relate to this. So I'm really glad that we're just bringing this candid conversation to the podcast.
Your perspective around self image is something that I've admired for years. I mean, we've been connected. I don't even know exactly how long. I think it was from a community group that we both were in during the pandemic or shortly after. And then now we've been in a couple of other groups together. But I'm curious, when did you initially first start that photo practice of looking at your image to unlock and awaken that new perspective? And what was the significant light bulb moment that went off for you to start that? There had to have been this divine calling, if you will, that you experienced where you knew that you needed to put that into practice for yourself. And now that grew your whole business and your brand, which I think is fantastic. So it's like, what was
Mhm.
that aha moment to where you experienced what you needed to do in that moment to have that shift?
Have you ever had the moment? Okay, I have a question for you just to put it in perspective so you get it, because everybody's had this moment. Have you ever had this moment where, I don't know how old you are, but let's pick a time maybe like 15, 20 years ago, right? When you woke up and you looked at yourself in the mirror and you were like, oh, and the gamut like of self-talk, just the litany just starts running through your head, right? And now you go back, you look at a picture of yourself from that time and you're like, I had it going on. What was I thinking? Look at me, right? If I could tell her now what I see, look, just look. Everybody has experienced that. And we've also experienced that moment when we have a photograph of ourselves that we don't like and our fingers hovering over the delete button. And our friend or somebody who we love and respect is like, do not. That is a fantastic picture of you. I love that picture of you. And you're looking at it and you do not see what they see. Clearly, they see something that you don't see. That disconnect right there between those two things grated on me. And it really, really bothered me. So, back to this whole cultural conversation about beauty standards and the harm of filters and Instagram and all these other things, even the work of More Than a Body pointing out self-objectification, that's great. But then their answer to that is, well, be kinder to yourself. Allow yourself the space to accept your body as it is. And I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of women that are very successful with that, at least long term. It's like the equivalent of everybody driving past a house saying, observing, oh, the house is on fire. The house is on fire. That house is still on fire. Nobody's trying to put water, like actual water on it. So I went looking for the water. And what I found in those 30 days, it was my intention to get pictures because it was the pandemic. It was 2020. I was moving my business online. I was helping other women move their business online, and I could give them the advice and I could like give them what they needed so they could show up and be visible, but I couldn't give it to myself. So again, there was that gap that really bothered me. And I'm really good at innovating. I'm really good at thinking outside the box. I'm really happy there. And so using the camera, one of the things I did was I didn't delete. So in effect, in a shorter time span, in a 30-day time period of taking photos every single day, not deleting that day one picture is kind of the equivalent of looking back at that 15, 20-year-old picture and seeing something different. Because when you see that, we're just using photographs here, but when you see that version of yourself in that moment, you have an emotional reaction to it. And the emotional reaction is a trained response based on the stories and the biased self-perception that we think we know about ourselves. And so we delete it. If we didn't delete it, then we might give ourselves that space to go back and look and go, okay, there's actually something there. So not deleting it was one of the things I did. The other thing I did too was I didn't use the selfie camera. I used the back camera lens, right? The nicer lens anyway, because I wanted those pictures. And then what I noticed was like, I'm way more triggered by those than I am by the selfie cam. So then again, why? Where's the water? Why is this happening? And it comes down to neuroscience. It comes down to confirmation bias. Basically, the selfie image is what we see in the mirror. It's reversed. Our brain is happy. It feels safe. This is familiar. This is you. I like it. The other side is no, that's not safe. I reject that. That's not you, because it's a flipped thing. Everyone else in your life sees you flipped, not mirrored, which is why the friend was like, don't you dare delete that photo. That's exactly what I see of you. That's the person I love. And you're like, no, look at this selfie picture. It's so much better. And they're like, no, that's a selfie. You don't look like that to me. We don't listen to that. We don't hear that. But we have to hear that ourselves. We have to start taking that as proof. So what I did in that time, though, effectively, yes, I got photos. Yes, I looked at those photos. So not deleting them and actually like making myself sit down every day and go back through that entire 30-day camera roll until I got to the end of the 30 days and looked back at the first picture and just had so much love and empathy for myself. And I could see myself with such presence and such clarity. And what I was really doing that whole time was I was giving myself the gift of space. That's it. If I could go off on a tangent that's like kind of relevant in popular culture right now, it's a discussion that's happening, and just bring this into another context that listeners might get right away. I'm a big self-help book lover. Again, I'm in there. I'm looking for tangible answers. When I can find a book that's not just pointing out the fire, but actually giving me a resolution to put that fire out, I'm thrilled. There's a big discussion right now about Mel Robbins' book, Let Them. And it's polarizing. There's people who are like, this is the most amazing thing in the world. And then there's people who are like, I don't get it. It's only great, and you're only going to get it if you've already done all the internal work and the therapy and the priming of yourself to get it, because it's essentially just confirmation. Otherwise, it's too close. So when you're having that emotional response to somebody or something, the chances of you taking 5 seconds to think about Mel Robbins telling you to just let them, you can't do that, because that response and reactive time is too baked in. You're too close to it. But having done the therapy and the internal work and all of that, you've learned to take a minute and create the space. That's what I do, but I just do it with your self-image.
I love actually how you brought up Mel Robbins' book, and I'm going to keep this brief. But one of the observations that I have about some of the conflicting views about that book, I haven't read it personally, but I've done the work and I'm very aware to understand how to theorize it and apply it without actually having to go through the materials and whatnot. I think it's also very connected to a lot of content that's being produced in the personal growth space and the personal development space. And one of the issues that I have about that theory of just let them be, let them do, is it creates this space where you are allowing people to not take ownership and take responsibility of their actions. I know that's a completely different perspective than what we're talking about right now, but it creates this disconnect, I feel, in my mind, where if you value a relationship and there's a disconnect that happens in that relationship and you just let them be and take a step back and create that space, well, then you're just creating this environment where both people are lacking accountability.
I like where you're going with it. And I think part of that comes from it's it's this I know myself best. I know what I need. And look, every self-help theory at the end of the day comes to you can't control other people. All you can control are your own actions. And the frustrating thing about therapy, if you've ever been, is you go with a problem about someone else. And it's like, well, how did you contribute to this happening? And it is always the truth. It's always the truth. Not that, and we're barring like any kind of trauma or anything like that. We're just, how did you contribute to that petty argument with that person, right? Because you haven't held a boundary, because you let yourself be led down the path. It's always cleanup that we have to do. And then when we're cleaned up, then we can just let them because it bears no meaning for us. It doesn't take anything away from me. It doesn't diminish me. But to get to the point where someone's action can not diminish you and you can stay whole and integrity with yourself, that is years of work. There's years of work. And the majority of the people that are running to buy most of the books in the self-help section are not looking for years of work. They're looking for like, give me the thing.
Yeah, they want the quick fix.
Yeah.
And we know that there is no bypassing to the deep work that is brought up, especially when you are moving through an experience that potentially happened years ago, but you still feel the physical, emotional, and mental effects of that experience. That requires deep work and it requires looking in the mirror at your own reflection and knowing the part that you played, which is not always easy. It's not easy. It's a
No,
lot easier to point the finger and be like, they did it. It was their fault. I feel these effects because of something that they did. But no, there is accountability. There is accountability in taking ownership over the work that you need to do to heal and to move on from experiences that happen from the external or from people in our lives. I think
yeah,
that's
and it's
ultimately
usually
where I was trying to go with that. But pregnancy brain came in and was like, you're done with that thought.
no, I tracked you. I got it too. Because I think the other thing too is we tend to skip over the most simple answer. And so if you look, even in terms of our conversation, if you just say, you don't like your photo because you don't actually know what you look like, that's pretty groundbreaking to just sit there for a minute and be told that truth of, oh, you just don't recognize yourself. You haven't met yourself in that way. And it's so obvious, but that is the crux of it. That is the undiscovered territory because that cuts through everything. It's the simplest answer. But are you ready to now know? And are you actually ready to let go of the control that it needs to be something different? Because the women inside the photo club that are doing this together, I mean, these women are signing up and they're coming into this membership with other women and everybody is equally fearful. Nobody's coming in there like, yeah, let's bring it. I'm ready to post my photo for all you people to look at. Everybody's like, who's going to go first? But it ends up being incredible. And what we see is this delayering and this demasking and this sort of realization of, oh, this is actually really simple and I'm enough. And so there's no switching on, there's no pressure cooker, there's no performance. It's just, I am here. I've resolved all of this. We've made peace with the thing here that has just been causing me friction my entire life. I'm not wasting brain power on that anymore. It's a done deal. What can we really do now? Now watch me go. And it's a launching pad. And truly, it's a launching pad that we just aren't born with. I mean, as humans, we have two ways to perceive ourselves. barring technology. Okay, let's just assume you're not growing up with a phone in your hand. So you're born, you see yourself reflected in surfaces, and you see yourself through the eyes of your caregivers, the stories that you're told, what they tell you they value about you, what your significance and importance and meaning in the world is. And depending on who your caregivers are, that can be pretty skewed. And so I know mine was. And so when I had my own son, and that's because ultimately what I did was reparent myself. I gave myself this healing that none of us are born with. And I reparented myself and gave myself what I needed from the beginning. But we have to realize that no matter what somebody looks like and what we assume is easier for them because of their looks, they were born with the same basic innate biological disadvantage of not having an accurate self-perception, which is kind of mind-blowing.
I'm so curious to know through that reparenting process, what came up for you? Because, like, for me, through my personal experience, I feel like I've been on a path of reparenting myself for quite some time. I think people who are open to doing the deep work in different stages, there's always that process of reparenting in some way, shape, or form. But nothing has compared to becoming pregnant and knowing that I have a baby girl on the way, and knowing very much the reflection is going to be, or it could be, very similar to when I was a child, my little girl, the little girl within me, and how that was like. And I do the work, I do the reflection. I've done that leading up to getting pregnant because I wanted to be very intentional about how I did bring children into human reality, human experience. But there's been a lot of deep things that I thought were addressed and thought that had been worked on that came up through pregnancy and through knowing that I'm bringing a baby girl into the world, and very much knowing the potential challenges that she's going to go through and the part that I play in making sure that she's seen, heard, respected, valued through every single part of the process. So it's been a very enlightening experience, but also very heavy. And it's all hypothetical. I don't know exactly how that experience is going to go until she's physically in my arms. But I'm, again, turning this over to you. What was that reparenting journey? What did that look like for you? What was the aha moment where you were like, wow, okay, knowing that I'm bringing my son into the world, this is what I need to do for myself that's ultimately going to impact and influence him?
I just had one mantra, and it was, I don't want to be my mom. And the other thing I had was a bucket list. So I had things I wanted to do and experience before my son was born. I had like concerts I wanted to go to and like life I wanted to live because I had this impression and this pressure on myself that once he was born, I was going to be perfect. And I remember saying to my partner, I don't want regrets. Regret is, ugh, I would rather feel anything than feel regret, than have to feel the moment that I can't go back and change. So that was the way I went into my son being born. And then I got this human that very much dictated how he needed to be parented. And I listened to that and gave him what he needed. And I parented the child I had. And because I parented the child I had, what I needed to be was different. It was not perfect. It was present and grounded and not floating outside of my body anymore and not more focused on how I was being perceived than being experienced because my child is very grounded. He could tell if my mind wandered. He could tell if my energy shifted and it seemed like I needed to be doing something else or somewhere else. I saw him feel that on his face. And we started having self-image conversations. My son is actually transgender and he didn't let me in to that. I don't really like to call it coming out. I like to call it letting people in because I just think it's more lovely. But he chose to let me into that around age 17, 16, 17. And because I had done this work on myself several years earlier, I knew the identity work that he was going through. So it's just really crazy because me embarking on that in 2020 and then wrapping that up before he told me and then brought me in was I was ready. I was like, oh, this is why I've been doing all this work. This is what this is for. And again, there wasn't a grand plan. I mean, I think you can go in and you can plan so much in life, but you're going to be with this human for the rest of your life and their life, right? God's willing, and everybody's so lucky for that. But this is the plan. And so you have no choice but to be who you are in any given moment. And I don't think that you can really prep for it. And I don't think it's fair to a child to pretend that you've got it all figured out anyway. I think they need to see us going through our own stuff. It's how they build empathy that they're being raised by humans. And so, again, it's this pressure cooker situation. But when I picked up the camera to get myself online, I'm a photographer. I know I can take great pictures of other women and make them look at those photos and go, yes, this is a photo I've always wanted to have of myself. How did you do that? And I was like, so this is going to be no problem. I was like, no one can see my face right now, but I am just full of swagger and self-assuredness, but also shame because when I was back in the back of the house with my tripod and my camera, I didn't tell my family what I was doing because I knew they'd have a little chuckle. And it's just all those things in your mind of like, well, you're going to go on Instagram, you're going to start posting your own photos. Who do you think you are? They wouldn't have said this to me. This is honestly my own internal conversation. So I did this whole thing in secret. So the fact that I thought I could do it and it would be easy and it wasn't, it was hard. And then I already felt the shame. It was rough. It's not like I went into this cocoon for 30 days and came out a butterfly. Like I did battle with myself in there in this super condensed 30-day package. I don't make the women in Photo Club do it this way, by the way. Like I've walked the hard road so that I can get them to where they need to be. And they're doing it together and they have such a beautiful, supportive community. But I was alone. There was no way I was going to tell anybody what I was doing. But I had to work through all that shame. I had to work through all of those stories and figure out where they came from. And so, what that did is it really just found the vault and opened it. And that vault just continues to offer things up. Like, oh, here's this thing. But now I'm like, oh, that's cool because I actually know who I am and I know my worth and I know what I'm going to let in and what I'm not going to let in. So when something new floats out of the vault, it's like, I got you. I know that. I recognize you. And it's just, again, it's about having that space, which is such a luxury, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a luxury. It should just be the way that we are all built, truly.
That is such a beautiful story. Like everything, all of it is so beautiful. And I got chills multiple times as you were speaking. Oh, I don't even know if I can consecutively keep my thoughts together about everything that you shared.
It's
Really,
just having that self-trust in the moment, and you can do all the prep in the world, and then that plan's gonna, it's just gonna go out the window. It's just gonna go out the window. The birth plan, it starts with that, really. I mean, let's just let that go right away.
it's so funny that you mentioned that because that's actually where I've been. My headspace once getting back from our mini ceremony that we did, I was like, okay, now it's immediately birth prep time. Like we're down to 3 months. And I was like, okay, maybe I should sit down and start working on it. But then I just had this voice in the back of my head that was like, it does not need to be this curated plan because whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And so I just sat with that and was like, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. This is not really in my control. And I just need to maybe have a couple of bullet points, things that I would prefer as far as medication if I need it last minute or X, Y, and Z, certain things. But it does not need to be this curated plan that I had visualized from the beginning of the pregnancy of having this document ready to go in a laminated folder ready to give to my midwives. It doesn't need to be like that. There just needs to be a little bit of clarity on what I want and what I desire. And baby girl, she's going to take the lead on everything else because it's really up to her. It's not up to me.
Exactly. And you'll be okay. You're equipped to handle whatever direction that goes in. I mean, I think that's the biggest takeaway, right? It's like the fallacy of, can we just have this conversation for a minute? I'm going to book a photo shoot because you work with women who need what? They need photos, right? So that you can send them out and put their brilliance out into the world. And then they go and they get the photos and they're like, I booked this great photographer and the studio is so cute. And I have my outfits picked out. And then it's like, there's this fallacy that it's going to be amazing. And sometimes it is. And sometimes you do get a couple of pictures that are just absolutely incredible, but it's just the perception that this is going to be easy. You hire the person for the thing and the thing. I'm a big advocate of know what you can do on the other side of the camera and don't just let the photographer take over. Like, know how to take up space, know how to change your energy, know how to engage, know how to pull back, and just do you on the other side of the camera so that the photographer is just like, wow, thank you. Because it's honestly not really their dream to have to physically move you from pose to pose. So I just want to break that down because I know you have a lot of women that listen to your podcast that have photo shoots booked and feel like a doll in the picture sometimes.
Well,
Yeah.
to bring this back full circle, you had asked an open-ended question that was like, just think about a time where you've gone back and looked at older photos of you and found yourself comparing the differences between then and now. And for me, especially during pregnancy and watching my ever evolving body take form, I've looked back at a lot of my old photos, or not even old, just photos that I got about maybe 6 months before I was pregnant with this little soul. And during that time frame, those photos, I loved them. They were great. They actually turned out better than I could have ever envisioned, but it still was not that full image of me. I showed up to the shoot and was like, I'm just going to be in the moment and be present and do what I can, and we're going to see what we create. And it far beyond exceeded my expectations.
Mhm.
But what I've noticed, because I still use the images for blog articles and some social media content, just because it is more professional headshots to use in editorial content and whatnot. So I find myself still looking at those images a lot, especially in present day. And because where I'm at now in this reflection process of watching my body change and in ways that I'm not used to, which is a very humbling experience, I'm looking back on those images and being like, oh my gosh, I absolutely love how I looked in that moment. I find myself just beautiful. The hair, the makeup, the outfits, the essence, what was being brought out of me in that moment. But back then, I was like, oh, these are just great to use for now. I love them. They're giving me content to use. But it's like the context, the perception has changed significantly that I'm just like, oh my gosh, I actually want to go back to that because she was vibrant and stunning. And it seemed like she really had everything figured out, which I know I didn't. I was navigating a lot of grief in that moment. And that photo shoot for me was just a way to create a timestamp of me overcoming a very deep season of grief and what I could share in that moment. So the context, the feeling, the essence then versus where it is now, it's like, wow, I still find myself not comparing because it's not a comparison, but just finding and discovering new essences of me in that moment, even almost a year later. Again,
Yeah.
wanted to
And
bring
it's
that
all
full
you.
circle.
Yeah. And but it's all you. It's not like that wasn't you as well. You just may have had the help of somebody else to bring all that out. And this is you too. You might feel like, I hope you're taking a lot of pictures right now. Like, I understand it might be the last thing that you want to do, but your daughter is going to want these pictures of her in your belly and to see how beautiful and vibrant you look right now because you are and you do. So I hope you're not avoiding the camera. I hope you're taking a lot of pictures because you're not going to get this time back. And again, that feeling of regret, one day she's going to say, where are all the pictures of me in your belly? and you're going to be like, oh, I didn't want like my body and blah, blah. You're going to have that conversation. And I don't know, like I was in the position with my son where I had to have that conversation a couple times. And I was like, this is the last conversation I wanted to have was admit these things to him. I hope you're taking photos. And also, like, bodies are so wise and they're so smart. And your body is in full on protection mode right now. And it might be changing, and you might have water weight gain. Your body might look different, your face might look different, but you are in protection mode, and your body is literally cushioning the two of you until you can bring this person into the world. And then your body will be yours again. But for this really small window of time, you get to share it. And I remember this conversation is definitely taking a turn, but I remember somebody saying, when I was pregnant with my son and I got in an elevator or something, there's a woman in the elevator and she turned and she said, enjoy it because you'll never be this close again. And I tell you what, I appreciated every single moment of my pregnancy. It was the most delicious feeling, even though my body was doing its own thing, right? Because it's just temporary. And that's the whole point. Like this moment of somebody looking at their photo or not feeling great or not feeling like they have content to put online, but they've got a whole business and brand like waiting on them. This is just all temporary. This is totally not what I do. I like people to understand why so that it sticks and stays, we're not just manifesting over the pain or the actual issue. But I did hear this TikTok yesterday that I think is really fun to share. So they said, imagine this moment right now. You're doing whatever you're doing, putting your makeup on, making your breakfast. Now imagine 100-year-old or 80-year-old you dropped into your current body. What would she do with this day? With this body and with this vitality and this vibrancy? What would she do right now, given this moment, to redo this day again?
You know, when you have those thoughts that you're like, I'm pretty sure I thought this, but I don't know if I really did because we're in the moment having the conversation. But I could have sworn that there was a little stream of consciousness that entered my mind and entered my aura a couple of days ago when I was struggling with the outcome of my image for our mini ceremony. That I'm like, there's going to be a point in time where none of this is actually going to matter to me. There's going to be bigger things that I find value in, looking back on the life that I've lived, the opportunities that I took a part in, not these little moments where my hairstyler decided to stop working on the day that I'm getting married. And again, it was just one of those fleeting thoughts. But now that we're having this conversation, I feel that it's being reawakened and reactivated, that this was always supposed to be a part of the conversation. But what I really need to do with that is I need to go deeper because I am in this process of self-reflection. And it's really sad to admit this, but I'm going to admit it because it creates connection to the narrative. But I haven't been taking a lot of photos. And being around the camera is actually something that I have feared and have tried to avoid because I am struggling with the way that I look and the way that I feel.
You're not alone. There's a lot of women out there who are not pregnant and who are not actually growing another human, and they just feel the same way. There's a number of people in Photo Club who just freeze. They're like, I can launch a course, I can run a business, I can make this much money, but I cannot take my picture. And it's hard. I was really candid with you about that 30 days and what that was like for me. I also went into it with the expectation that I was going to be really good at it. So I think that your expectation says a lot. And I think maybe with your headspace right now, something that would be really interesting is to just remember to create that space for yourself and to take the photos so you don't have to look at them right now. If it's too triggering for you, you can just put them away. And then you can look at them later after you've had your baby and you've had some time and your hormones are regulated, and you can go back and you can start to build some empathy for yourself and thank yourself for showing up in that moment and letting those photos happen. Another thing you can do too is you can just ask people to take photos of you when you're maybe not super aware. Like when I look nice, when I look happy, when we're doing our thing, will you just grab a couple pictures and we don't have to make a big deal of it. I don't have to pose. I don't have to do whatever. So if you just ask somebody to start helping to document you and they don't even have to show them to you until later, that's something else you can do. And then another thing, I know we talked about this when we were prepping for the podcast, to build trust with your brain. Because it's one thing to hear me say that there's more than meets your eyes. Okay. It's another thing for you to sit down and see it with your own eyes. So, one of the things I asked you to do is to take your photo. I wanted you to take it with the back camera, but that does take some practice. So, I was going to be forgiving if it was a selfie. And then I was going to ask you and you can decide if you want to do this live on air, or if you want to do this later. And then if you want to reflect on it on your next podcast or with your community, that's up to you. And everybody listening can do this too. So get the photo. You're going to make that photo. You're going to turn off your overhead lights. Number one. Okay. You will never stop hearing me say, turn off your overhead lights. Half of the reasons why we don't like our facial features, our under eye shadows, why we think we look tired is because of the color of the light bulb. It's that shadow coming overhead. Just turn off your overhead lights. Clean your camera lenses. They're not clean. I guarantee you, they're not clean. Just give them a wipe with whatever you use to clean your sunglasses and you're good to go. Take a photo, really simple photo. Don't pose, don't do duck lips, don't raise it high, don't raise it low. Take it like a mugshot photo. And when I say that, I want the camera lens at eye line directly in front of you, like a headshot. And look at the camera. You can smile, you can not smile. It's up to you. If you feel that you always have to smile, I would say explore why. And take the photo. Once you have your photo, you're going to turn your photo black and white. We do this because we don't need to nitpick your skin color. We don't need to start self-talking about whatever's going on. So just get rid of any aberrations, get rid of less than ideal light, make it black and white. Then the next thing I would want you to do is to rotate it upside down. This is an old art school trick that they actually use this is really terrible, but we're going to use it we're going to use it for good, not for evil. But they used to do it. They used to take someone's face because that was back when it was thought that people who were most photogenic were symmetrical. If you are less reactive to your photo, like you are somebody who just doesn't really have a problem with it, you are probably more symmetrical because your brain is not having to process not only seeing a non-mirrored image, but it's also having to process seeing your asymmetry in reverse. So if you have one eye slightly higher than the other, in the mirror, your brain evens everything out. When you look at a photo, a non-reversed photo, so not a selfie, your brain is like, whoa, because now it's looking at your face. It's not a mirror image. And the thing that it auto-corrected about your facial asymmetry in the mirror after years of looking at yourself and being reinforced again and again and again is now on the other side of your face. And it's alarming. It's alarming. It's like somebody saying, hey, all this time you thought you were human and you're actually a bug. I mean, it's just it's as alarming as that. So by turning our faces upside down, we're looking for our facial asymmetry and we're showing ourselves and our brain, okay, we're taking our face out of context, right? We're flipping the perspective. So now your chin's on top, your forehead's on the bottom. Now you can really see. Oh, for example, we'll use me. I have one eyebrow that's higher than the other. I have one eye that's slightly lower than the other. I have one nostril that's a slightly different shape. One of my cheeks is fuller, which gives the illusion that the cheekbone on the left side of my face is higher than the cheekbone on the right side of my face. So that might be why I have a preference for a certain side, and I don't really resonate with photos people take from a different side. So by investigating our own faces in this way and flipping that photo upside down, we're like, oh, this is you too. And then we can begin to investigate those facial differences. And everyone has these. And when you flip the photo upside down, it's really apparent. Now, the old art school way was to see what their best side is. You flip their photo upside down, then you photograph them only on that side so they look good. But that is not what we're doing here. We're trying to explain to our brain, it's cool. This is you too. This is why you think you look funky. And because once you know, like, I don't know about you, but I would rather know than not know anything. Because once I know, I can stop thinking the worst possible thing. Just tell me so that I'm not making up going crazy, making up all these other things, right? It's what you're doing with your brain. You're giving your brain that, like, okay, let's get you a baseline so you can regulate, because your emotions don't come in here in your heart. That's where you feel the emotional response. It starts in your brain. So if you can get your brain on board, your emotions will follow. So if you feel like, if you did it, I know you took your photo, if you feel like talking about it, if you feel like sharing, if you just want to share some observations, it's totally up to you.
Yeah, I want to go ahead and follow our initial plan because it's something we agreed to. And I think it brings a lot of context and some significance to the practice and the narrative itself. So I actually took this maybe about an hour before we started. And I'll tell you a little bit about the thought process now that I've been pondering on this for weeks. I had every plan of waking up and doing my hair and doing my makeup and then taking the photo in that moment to see if there was some significant differences and whatnot that I picked up on. But in my raw form, just this morning, I was like, you know what? I'm feeling nervous about this conversation because I know the work that there is to be had. I'm going through the work. I'm doing the work in real time right now in this new phase and stage of my life. So I actually just decided to pull my hair back, clip it up in my clip, and I just took the photo. And as I was listening to you speak, I have the image here to the left of the screen. And I don't know if it's the way that I was holding my head or holding my face, but when you were talking about how you can start to see how one side holds itself differently than the other, or one that holds it higher, there is a tilt in my face. Whereas, again, it's upside down. So, what side's what? But I almost think that my left side, looking at it upside down, holds itself much higher, which I thought that it would always be my right side, given that my right side is more dominant. I always thought that my right side was my best side, just looking at a number of photos over the years and how I was holding myself, positioning myself. But if I'm looking at this, would you say that maybe the left is the more prominent side given how it's laying?
So what I've done, what I figured out after doing this experiment with like hundreds and hundreds of women, okay, is that there is one side. There's a really great artist. This is in my course, No More Bad Photos. Oh my gosh, I talk about him all the time. His name is escaping me, but he photographed people and then he created new composite images where he split their faces down the middle and then he mirrored the right side and then another photo mirrored the left. So neither of them are what the actual people look like, but they're this flipped mirrored, because what the brain is doing is it's picking a dominant side. So for me, it likes my left side. And I don't know, I've been trying to investigate if there's some correlation between your hand dominance and then the opposite side being the one that your brain tends to choose. But what it does when you look in the mirror, it auto corrects the other side so that you are symmetrical looking to yourself in the mirror. So it's almost like erasing a side of your face, which is crazy because our brains are really, really smart, but it also wants to take away the cognitive dissonance that's going to cause the emotional reaction and make you an efficient machine. And so it's incredibly efficient, but it's also very, very learnable is not the word, but it can learn. And so, but in order for it to learn, we've got to stop deleting those photos. We have to start taking photos and looking at photos with the side that is lesser known to us and introducing that side to our face as well. If you go through my Instagram feed, you'll see most of my pictures are my left side. Because even when I was doing this work and I knew that, it was still like, I like this picture the best. Now, in the more current ones, if you go through, you'll see I'm favoring the other side more because this is something that takes time. So just looking at it, what you're probably seeing is one being prominent than the others. You're probably seeing that you have a cheek that's fuller, so therefore it looks like one cheekbone is higher. And you might also tilt your head from one side to the other And the other thing you might be seeing too is that your nose is not directly in the center. It could be fuller on one side than the other, which is diminishing. It's giving the appearance that you almost have like less real estate on one side of your face than the other. I have that as well. So, which you don't, you have the same, it's just the appearance, but also the light that you took that photo in is going to play with that perception as well. And whatever shadows are being cast. There's another, I can link this for you if you want to put it in the show notes. There's this great YouTube video where this woman stands still and this light, colored light, have you seen it? It travels around her face in real time and you can watch her and she's objectively pretty, right? But as this light moves, it sort of almost creates like these monster effects of her facial features, like aging her, changing the shape of her nose, changing the shape of her chin, elongating her face in real time, just by the light cast around the shadows on her facial features. That is all the cherry on top of this basic thing that you're doing here. So once you start learning how those different elements play in as well, and then you go back to one of those photos that you said you really loved. Look at those photos. Where's the light? What side of the face is that? Were you smiling? Were you not smiling? Study those because there's probably more in there for you to learn from about what's actually happening in that moment. Look beyond filters, look beyond whatever edits they did on you, okay, if you can. And then just start studying what those things are and introduce those different elements. Then what's going to happen is you're going to start to get photos. You're going to start to look at photos. You're going to go, I don't like this photo because of the light. Look at where the light is. I don't like this photo because it's too low. It's too high. It's making my nose shape this way. I understand why. That's the space that we talked about at the very beginning of this episode. Now you have the space. And it's not about getting the perfect photo. It's about not just going, ew, and then going and hiding in your room for the rest of the day. It's about going, I know it. I know why I feel weird about that one.
I loved all of this, everything that you've shared, the perspectives, the deep work. And I love how you mentioned how it is very much part of the work that I do, but only on a very small scale. Imagery and having headshots to use for press and media and headshots or graphics for social media podcast episode launches and whatnot. Imagery is very much a part of a brand or a business these days, as well as it should be, because it brings the essence of the person who's behind the brand to the audience and it builds that connection. But the work first starts with that individual first and foremost, and how they're able to see themselves and bring their essence through the imagery, how they feel about themselves, how they see themselves.
You said that beautifully.
Oh, thank
That's it.
you.
Yep. That's it.
I want to give you open space to talk about any other initiatives that you're working on. I know that you had talked about Photo Club, which I think is such an incredible opportunity for people to work on this shift of image and how they view themselves to reflect on. But is there anything else that you're bringing to the community that you support right now?
I support you bringing your full self and anything that explores you. I have a Substack where I'm probably the most myself because there's no imagery over there unless I want there to be. And so it's really where I can just bring all those parts of me online. So come hang out with me on Substack. I'm also working on getting a book agent. So let's put that out in the universe. I have my book, I have my proposal, I've sent a lot out. I am doing the work. And this needs to be out in the zeitgeist now. So that's my heart and soul. That's something that's for me, but ultimately for the community and for people who are looking at all my offers and don't really know where they belong or what they want to do. And just really quick, Photo Club is you level up quickly because you're doing this with other women, but I understand that's not for everybody. So you can still learn what we talked about here on the podcast in No More Bad Photos, which is my core method that we use in Photo Club in real time. So depending on where you are, there's something to meet you and come meet me. Just come. Like I'm so nice. So just come be in my world. Come find me on Instagram and Substack.
I'm over here giggling because, yes, you are just so vibrant in your personality. From the minute that I've connected with you for the first time up until now, it's like we've always had very humbling conversations, but also very real conversations. That's community for me. The people that I get to meet, the conversations that we get to have, but then also the opportunities that we get to create together. So I really hope that through this conversation today, that we've been able to bring some enlightenment for others who might be struggling with their own self-image and how to show up online, because they go hand in hand. In order to show up online or show up for your business or show up for the people in your life, it really comes down to how you love and how you nurture and how you support yourself. So I hope this brings some gems of wisdom for everybody tuning in.
Yeah, I do too. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you.